All right. We're back again for another Wet Ink Wednesday, and this time we're going to be talking about all about Zero Day War with the designer Matthias Bonnici. Hey, Matthias.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right. Going all right. I think it's been about a year since I recorded an interview with you for Wet Ink Wednesdays. Because we talked about Psychic Kids,
Yes.
which was in maybe February of last year. So it's been almost a year since I talked to you uh all for a recording. I've obviously talked to you because you've been working hard for us all year long.
Yeah.
Um with us. We've been working together, all of us. Um but so we already did a lot of the like first time caller kind of like stuff that I like to do, like about how you got to be a nerd and all that kind of stuff. So I think I just want to jump in with this because Zero Day War is your game. It's not just a game that you're doing some graphic design for, although you also are doing that, and we'll
Yeah.
talk about that too. But like this is you've designed the game.
hmm
So let's talk about it. And so let's talk about what is your what are some of your biggest board game, like like what are some of your board game tabletopy kind of influences, right? Like what are things you like to play? What kind of games do you like to play? Or
Oh,
you
I,
know
I like crunchy games. Like the game I think I played the most over the past 5 years has been Dune Imperium.
okay.
Um, I I'm a gigantic Dune fan. Like I every time they put out a new game, I'm like, why? Gotta put more money out. Um, play Twilight Imperium. I play like I love crunchy games, and then I also like super simple games. Like I will play Cobras done by Zinsleys. I play like I'm like looking at my board game wall now. I'm like um one of the favorite games of my wife and I is Voluspa, which is just a tile game. And you're using different tiles to get more points throughout, and it's all Viking themed. And
All
big
right.
surprise, I like Viking stuff. Um, but I like love that game to death, and it's super simple, but it's super elegant. Um, you know, other than that, I like pretty much anything anyone brings to the table for the most part.
So what would be like, casting your mind back? I mean, we've been living in a wonderful age of like too many games to play for a while now.
Yeah.
So what's one of the first games you can remember that was like either one that you, I don't know, saw in a game store or somebody put up at a game night and you were like, "Oh, this is new. This is not Monopoly. I need to know more about this." I mean, have you been with it since the Euro game revolution in the 90s, or have you what was the first game that really grabbed your mind
So
in that way?
the first non like Milton Brothers game type thing was literally Dune.
The
I
old
played
one
that.
from
Yeah,
the
I played that. I believe in '83.
wow.
Um, and I played. I had a babysitter who brought Dune over. We also played Dungeons and Dragons very badly. Um, and then I believe like after that it was like Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, and I love tie-in games. Like I have like the Gremlins board game back there, and I've got four versions of the thing, and I love tie-in games because I like to see how other people interpret the properties.
Sure. What's I mean, tie-in games are so they're not universally bad, but they're like often a miss. So like
Oh yeah.
what's what's one of your favorite of the adapted games like that, in IP based board games? What's one of the I mean, you've already said Dune twice, but other than
Right.
that, like what's another one? What's another one that's more
Oh, I like the Hellboy board game because I love the
mm,
investigation aspects of it as well as the battles, and the figures are fantastic. Um, I have a copy of Escape from New York that my wife made for me
wow.
based off of the original Milton Brothers game, which was really fun. We misinterpreted the rules and made it super hard, but we really enjoyed playing it. Um, One that I can't say was great was the Big Trouble in Little China game. It was just too long.
Is that the one that's the legendary? Didn't they do a
No,
legendary
this
encounters of that, or are you talking about a different one?
I'm talking about the one by Greater Than Games.
Hmm.
So you have this almost 3 foot by 3 foot wide board,
That's a
and
big board.
you play the first half on the first half of the board, and then you flip it over to go fight Lo Pan on that board. It's a 4.5 hour long game. The game should not be longer than the movie. You know, admittedly, Dune is a 7 hour game
Well, that's what I was
sometimes.
about to say. You've talked about CI3 or Twilight Imperium and Dune. Like these are famously long games. So like,
Right.
but so what? So what? Why isn't it? I mean, I understand the point about like it shouldn't be longer than the movie, but like, why don't you want a 4 hour version of that game, but you want a 4 hour version of something else?
Because I think that it took all the fun out of a really fun movie. Like,
Hmm.
Dune is super serious. You can get into it, and I can talk about it for hours. Big Trouble in Little China, I will just sit there and just watch whenever it's on TV. And it's so fun. It's got so many good aspects of it. And this game just stripped all of that out. And
Hmm.
it just turned into it was basically a gang fight on one side and then a gang fight with magic on the other side. And it just took forever. There was no quips. There was no,
Hmm.
it just didn't have the soul of the game.
They even have
So,
the
so the movie.
yeah. I mean it. If they've got to at least have the quips like on the cards and stuff like that, right? Like if
I
but
don't
yeah,
believe it
like
did.
if it doesn't even have that, then yeah, that does seem like a missed opportunity.
Now, the
But that's what
artwork was nice. I'll give it this. The artwork was fantastic. It was just the game was just dry when you had this movie that was just so fantastic.
right, right. It's a it's a I know it's a classic. It's a hole in my catalog for sure. So I'm gonna, you know, to pick it up, I guess. Um the movie, not the game.
Yeah.
Uh um all right. Well, so I think it's unsurprisingly, right? Like you like these kind of crunchy games. You like these sort of like you love the gorgeous miniatures. I'm sure you're always like evaluating other people's graphic design when you look at the
Mhm.
cards and the board. I'm sure all that kind of stuff. And so like I'm thinking about the other games that I know you've designed. Like you did a little tiny like lunch break cat game a while ago. I know you did rampaging Yotans, which I want to hear a little bit about, but like the importance of the position and the model and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Like, and so it's like talking about like the games that you like. I'm like, uh-huh, that makes sense. That makes sense. You're designing these things. Um, so talk a little bit about that and how you came to go from like this is a thing I could do with my when my babysitter brings over the real game to like, no, this is something I'm going to design and I'm going to lay it out and I've got it. Like, what were your first sort of forays into board game design?
So I got into, much like a lot of my professional life, I got into it by accident. Um, One of my friends put up this little chit and he was like, "Can anyone help me with the information management on it?" So I looked at it and I'm like, "All right, this is going to be an hour. I can just sit down and do it." So I did. I sat down, did it, sent it back to him. He loved it. And then he showed me the logo for the game, which was dreadful. So I ended up literally kicking his door down and redesigning his whole game from beginning to end. And then I think that I was so assertive on him getting this game done, he handed me Rampaging Jotun in pieces that he designed on his honeymoon, and it was just little chits and this and that, but the core game was almost there. And then I just took hold of it and ran with it. And I ended up contacting a fantastic artist called Nicholas Giancondino. He's done one of the Supers board games. He's just did Small Cyberpunk. He did the artwork for that. Um, and I completely rebuilt the game from the ground up. I rewrote a bunch of the rules. I worked with Dave on a lot of aspects of it to improve it. Um, but I designed it one way, and then I got laid off from my job. And I needed to not fall into that self-pity moment. So I redesigned the game again from scratch. The cards are still using the artwork that Nicholas gave me, but it now has better iconography, better fonts, better, like I put textures in the backgrounds. I did all this stuff to make it more it fit the theme, the Viking theme, make it more easy for people to play, read. And after, I've had kids as early as 5 play it while their older brother read them the cards, but I had a 5-year-old play this game
Mm-hmm.
successfully. So I've always that's a moment of pride of mine is that when your graphic design and the information is easy enough to understand that someone that doesn't really read can play through the game with their older sibling, it was really a lockdown moment for the game.
Do you like those kind of games? This is sort of a side tangent, but like, do you like a game that has a lot of like unique iconography? I know something like Roll for the Galaxy is one of those, or Race for the Galaxy is one of those games that's like people say they love it, but it takes like a year to learn how to play it, and then because they have so many icons that stack, and you're doing stuff like that, and you know um trying to refine that information down. I mean, you talked about a chit. Like, I imagine, are you talking about like the old school like wargaming chits that are like 1.5 millimeters by 1.5 millimeters? Like real
No,
small little thing, not millimeters, sorry, centimeters.
no, this is about an inch in diameter.
Okay,
So it
okay.
had the creature image on the top, and then it had some icons across the bottom, and then the name on it. And the way he just set it out, it just wasn't instinctual to how it works.
Hmm.
Um, and that's what I like about a lot of iconography is that it does make it a little bit more instinctual for you to, this means this. And once you understand that this means this, your mind will automatically look at that and go, oh, like if you look at a red octagon, everyone knows it's a stop sign.
I mean, yeah, that's in this country anyway. That's the stop sign.
Right. But it's like that all over the place. It's just we've as a people can very easily look at an icon and understand what it means as long as it's instinctually what it's supposed to be.
I do. I know there's a game that we have that's we play a lot called Guild Hall, and it has these weird symbols on it. I mean, there's like a explainer sheet that's how you get the language independence, right? The cards have the symbols, but they're like houses and black houses and white houses and arrows pointing at each other and like hands and A's for action. So there's like an A plus black house pointed this way, and it's got these blocks of symbols, but like, okay, right. That does all mean something. So like, I'm the White House and you're the Black House. So I'm moving from my house to your house with one action, and like, you get it all. But then like, but you have to have the explainer sheet basically to
Mm.
tell you that code, and then once you know it, then it's on the card, it, right? um but it's I don't know, it is sort of like, it's a whole I mean, it's that, I guess that's sort of like what you're talking about, right? I know you've designed icons, you've designed logos. Do you do a lot of that kind of stuff, like trying to make language independence a thing, or is that sort of like the right amount, right? Sometimes you need, excuse me, sometimes you need text and sometimes you need a symbol. Like,
Well,
what's your balance there?
in my day job, I do a lot of icons for. So I'm a on my 9 to 5. I'm the lead designer for Altec Lansing and Iowa, which is audio components, headphones, speakers, radios, stuff like that. So I make a lot of icons for what things are like,
Has these
certain things.
ports, this volume
Not even
knob.
not even that, like high fidelity, like on the boxes, selling points where it has maybe one sentence, but you have an icon for it. And then on the back, you have the piece and has the icons pointing at them so you know what they go to.
Hmm.
Um, and I believe like icons are something that's been with us since the beginning. Like most of our languages were originally just were just small pictures.
Sure, sure.
A lot of the Chinese language, a lot of the base language is pictures of things. Like if you look at them, there's forests, there's houses, there's things that they made. And over time, we've just refined that further and further, but we're still using icons. Look at your computer. You have like the same icons that have been around for the past 50 years.
Right. Like
Yeah.
you get the joke about you printed the save icon, when somebody sees an old 3.5 floppy, Um,
That's what I'm expecting when for someone eventually is going to hit me in the old when they look at Zero Day War and they see the first player mark. I'm like, that's the save icon. I'll be like,
yeah, well, get ready. At the time this video is posted, it may already have happened.
yeah.
Um, uh, so uh, I got my questions here. Like, I think we've kind of been bouncing around here. So you mentioned Zero Day War now. So why
Mhm.
don't I mean, I guess I mentioned it at the beginning, but like tell us what is it and how you came to do it, because it's something you've got an anime shirt on. I know
Oh
you're
yeah.
you're into the Macross stuff. So theme of hacking in space, which is the theme of Zero Day War, is not necessarily it's not very far from it's right in the right in the wheelhouse of all your interests. But
So
where did you get the
it
idea for it, and tell us how it started?
so Zero Day War didn't actually start out as a future hacking game. Um,
Okay, okay.
so Zero Day War was I was playing a game with my friend Josh, and it was a horrible, horrible game with a horrible subject. Um, and I looked at like how they set up the board, which is somewhat the same as Zero Day War is, except with they had 3 rows of three, and that was it. Um, but they had the idea of moving things from one board to the next, which I didn't really like. But the idea of the board being right there, made out of these cards, stuck with me. So I started working on a really basic version of Zero Day War, which is proof that I can make an ugly prototype. Every prototype I've ever made has always been graphic designed out. And one day I just started doing this little thing and I brought it to Dreamation and started working on it. But it was originally a vehicle for the movie Hackers. So Hackers is one of my favorite movies. It is so inaccurate. It is mind-boggling.
What's the My voice is my passport? That's hackers, right?
Yeah. So I could have, at the time, I could afford the license to Hackers, but I could not afford the license to the likeness of the actors.
Right, right, right.
Angelina Jolie is not going to sell her likeness to a little piddly game designer like me. But this was also a cunning plan to meet Matt. Never met him, always wanted to. Um, but the original start was the card uh, Dirty Code. And originally they had hackers quotes on them. So the first one, the sloppy code, sorry. So the top of sloppy code said, "I hope you don't screw like you type." And that was the first card I ever made with any text on it. Um, and it survived until I figured out that I could not afford to really do the game how I wanted to. So I decided to do hacking in space. And Zero Day is a hacker term for an exploit on um, a system or program that has a problem on day one that can be exploited. And it opened up how the game, it really did from that point on open up the theme of the game more. Once, I put it in space, it just seemed like it worked better. The game was originally designed to mess with your mind, so the exploits were the same colors as the files.
Okay.
So you had to keep the memory aspect of it going with all the things that are running on the files and the cards, and it started to mess people up in the when in the play testing. So I had to start changing colors
It's
because
like the thing where you print the word blue in yellow and ask people to read it, and they don't
Mhm,
read it. They say yellow because it's printed in yellow. That kind of thing. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah. So it was originally designed to mess with your mind, but it was too much. So I started putting the background icons. I started working on the planets more and started building out more of the look to what it is now. Um, uh, the icons and everything like in the backgrounds were always good. And then Lucy's artwork just elevated everything
Oh,
else just
yeah.
so much.
We're gonna talk more about that in a minute, but like, tell us more about like either the setting or I don't know which makes sense to you to talk about, like the setting, because I want to ask about this more about the details of the setting because I know you've got like way more depth in your brain than is on the
Mhm.
cards, and then but also like maybe the maybe describe, and we could put a picture up too, but like describe what the actual gameplay looks like. You've talked about the board, you've talked about the exploit cards, so tell us
Okay.
how it works and what's actually on the table and what do you actually do, and then we'll get into some more of these other elements.
Oh, sure. So you start out by setting up the SysNet, which is the internet of the future. It is a ironclad, secure network that all business, interactions, entertainment, everything that we do now on the internet, but actually secure and actually not selling your shit to everybody. So, so you set up the SysNet. Start with the core, which is four cards in the center, and whether you're if you're playing a two-player game, um, it goes to 3x3 cards. On a 3 to 4 player game, it goes to 4x4 cards. And it doesn't have any borders. So when you're putting down exploits, you could be going to the edge, and you're now hacking the file on the other side. And the idea is to use your exploits to stop your opponents from getting their files while using your exploits to get all your files. And the idea is to get the most files over 3 rounds. And each round is broken up into 2 points, into two parts. When you put the exploits down, you put them face down under your file that you want, that you're aiming at. So some of them have arrows pointing to other cards. So you may be going to the left, but no one knows what you actually put down, and they have to guess on the amount of countdown tokens that you put on there because each thing has a price to use it. And then as the cycles go on, one of the countdown tokens come off it, and when that countdown token reaches zero, that exploit goes off. Um, so
It's like such a thematic part of the game for me. Like when we were first playing it, like it's like you're watching those countdown markers, and it's great. But just that's just me throwing that in. Go ahead.
well, yeah, and also at the end of the round, they go off in number order based on who's first player. So you might have a devious plan, and the person next to you be like, nah, and they'll put down a nuke and just wipe out everything on that one section that you were just trying to get, or they got to it before you did. But then there's also those times where you put down like a 4 or 5, and it just goes through, and just getting that 4 or 5 point card down just makes it like it's it's just amazing to just get that through when you have all those countdown tokens just coming off.
Right. I
Um,
mean, it's almost like I mean, it does kind of create that sort of, you know, movie magic kind of tension, right? Where it's abstracted, right? Where you're watching the countdown timer in the corner of the screen as somebody's typing furiously away. And even though, that isn't necessarily what real hacking looks like, that's movie hacking, right? Where you're like,
right.
I'm going to put down this thing. It's got 5 counters on it. So it's going to be powerful. if it goes off. So like you where everybody's it's on the table now. You got to react to it or let it go off. Like I don't know. It's definitely like you know a power piece when you play one of those exploits.
So my favorite exploit in the game is Ghost. It is the biggest bluff. I love it. Every time I put it down, I put the 5 countdown cubes on it because everyone will aim for that one thing because they think that you're going to score like 6 different things at once, and it's absolutely nothing. It's just a blip on the screen.
Lovely,
Um, but I
lovely.
also I like the fact that it also once you get a file also tells you that you can do further things. So um, like you can get another file, or you can put down another exploit, or you can do other things. Um, and I like that this game isn't just one level.
Yeah.
Like you're working with your exploits, and then you're also working with the file cards that you get that tell you to do other things that either will help you, or hinder your opponents.
Well, and like so many games, it's a you know you're trying to score points. Obviously, that's the sort of agreed upon. Many games use the same abstraction, right? What is the point of
Yeah.
this game? It's to score the most points. But like you mentioned the planets, so like there's Earth, Titan, Mars, and Venus, right? Are the
Yes.
planets that are the base planets, and so they have different needs from the system. They're trying to steal different information, right? Or they get bonuses if they steal different information, right?
Yeah, they
So
get
you're
bonuses in what their chief exports are. So Earth has hold on, let me see. I'm actually going to pull up an image. So Earth is military and oh God, I pulled up the wrong image. Um, but each one has its own particular exports.
right,
Like Titan does mainly manufacturing, so manufacturing is their big thing. Each one, um, Mars does all the agriculture, so they have agriculture. And it just gets each person gets something specific to their point. We originally had a problem with the first player that we fixed with making it Earth, and if you get the Earth token first and a 4-player game, you get an extra 6 points to start, but you go last. And it helped balance out the game more when we originally didn't have an issue. And the planets really helped do that for us.
yeah, different kind of working in different ways. Um, all
I'm
right,
also oh,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead,
Sorry.
go ahead. No,
I'm also a giant sci-fi nerd, so if you read the actual text on the planets, it's all about the future of our system. Like when we finally left Earth, this is what happened on these specific areas that we went to, and they are, I feel, realistic goals for us. Like we've already been talking about. NASA's already talked about going back to Titan for the complex hydrocarbons in the future. We're looking at Ganymede. We're looking at um, Enceladus. We're looking at other planets for potable water. We're looking at the asteroid belt for rare earth metals, metals that we don't even have or even know about. Also, large amounts of water is found in the belt.
right,
Um, Earth is messed up. We really messed up our planet in the future. We are heading there now. It happened.
right, right.
People have to have bionic implants in their lungs so they can breathe our atmosphere because we have messed it up that badly.
All right. So I mean, you're talking about like NASA stuff and this implant thing. I mean, this is like sort of the fictional backstory of the setting, right?
Mhm.
But it's like you were saying, it's based on like NASA science and like reasonable extrapolation of like current trends and stuff like that. But also like it's it's like someone I mean, who you're the designer. I can't tell you what to do, but like it's sort of like it's deeper than it needs to be, right? I
Mhm.
feel like you've built a whole world that this game sort of exists in. So there's sort of like we started talking about what's a good IP game, like it's almost like I mean, I think this is I think you've said this before, so I'm not like planting a seed in your head or anything like that, but this is an IP sort of world that you're imagining, and theoretically you could set your like cyberpunk future noir on Earth in this setting, and you could do your, you know, uh, you could do a different game that's just water management on, you know, some other, you know, asteroid world or something like that, you know,
Mhm.
and it's all set in this same relatively near future world, right? I mean, that's sort of your big idea, right, about
Yeah,
this thing that you've developed, right?
yeah. This is something I really do want to expand upon. I have so many ideas for just. So I mentioned the fall of Ganymede, just one sentence,
Uh-huh.
and I have tried for 2 years to make a board game off of that, and I really just every single time it just got bigger, bigger, more complex, and it became like it stopped being a game and started being a chore. And that was not what I wanted at all. Like I looked at Red November, and that's such a fun game, but that was like if I could make something as fun as that about a colony failing, that would have been perfect. But every time I like started adding another thing, this technology would be here. You'd have to do this. You'd have to, and it just got too big to be managed. Um, so
That, I mean, that's, I love that. That's kind of like my favorite thing when you put those one-liners into the fictional backstory of a world or whatever. You know, like, oh yeah, yeah, since the fall of Ganymede, this, and this has happened. And it's like, the what? The what now? What, you know, like who's the, you know, and who connects to that? What led to that? What is the fallout from that? And like none of that is in the game. You just put it in one sentence. And but it it invites the brain to invent all of those other things, those other possibilities. So I love that you also then tried to work out some possibilities, and you haven't gotten there yet. But like I'm like, okay, fall of a space colony, board game style. I mean, I'm imagining like, you know, the like this war of mine, and I'm imagining the first Martians, and I'm imagining you know, well, even terraforming Mars, like all of those. There's like a lot of real
yeah,
punchy board games, like even some of the new, like what was the Rebellion, Star Wars Rebellion, right? Where there's like secret missions and you're recruiting people. Like there's it just the fall of Ganymede. It could there's it, you could just you could make it work someday. That sounds exciting.
yeah, it was falling closer into that good feeling game, that War of Mine. It was starting to fall into that level of you're gonna feel bad by the end of the game.
So you need to like pare it back. I mean, not that what's the Dead of Winter isn't a feel good game, but it's a little less complicated than this War of Mine. Um,
Yeah.
well, anyway, so what are some other like? Do you want to tell us anything else about like some of the big plot of like the world? What kind of other things have you brought in? I mean, I know you've you know, I mentioned anime as one of your influences. So like,
Mhm.
is there like an anime vibe to it, or does it have
Oh yeah.
more of that? Because like a lot of the other things you mentioned feel a little more, you know, Kim Stanley Robinson style, you know, American science fiction
Mhm.
more so than like other media. But like, what are you drawing from? Some of both, or what?
A little bit both. So I have a very large appreciation for Japanese and Asian cyberpunk. Not just Japanese, like Malaysian cyberpunk is got some really good intricacies because they build a lot of their religions and deities into their technological. I'm not going to say horror, but it's close to horror.
Hmm.
Um, Chinese cyberpunk is becoming very intricate. It's also being very stylized, which is a little bit more than what we have here. Um, and I have to, got to shout out to Maximum Mike for Cyberpunk, which I got to meet him at PAX. I was so happy. He signed my book. Um, but yeah, if you look in the rule book, there's a lot of quotes. There's a quote from Ghost in the Shell. There's a quote from the Transformers the movie. There's quotes from Hackers. actually the book, the rule book and the back ends with Matthew Lillard's quote from Hackers. Um, there's little quotes here and there, and I really like adding those little touches because it to me it makes it more feel more lived in, like someone's actually thought about the theme, integrating the theme and integrating popular culture into the theme without actually integrating it into the game.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
and
I
like,
mean, it is sort of like, and this is sort of like, obviously, this is Wet Ink Games' first, will be the first board game that we've published. And
oh
we've
no, we did Zhengshe.
that's a role playing game with board game elements. This is a straight up like, there's no character sheet for Zero Day War.
True.
There's a character sheet for Shangshi. So it's like, we're so much used like we're used to publishing things that have a lot of backstory like written,
Right.
and it is sort of a more delicate balance. Like in a board game, you don't want to take up more than about 3 or 4 pages of the rules explaining like the backstory of this particular world. Um,
Right.
so like the quotes is a good way to sort of, like you said, like get that feel of what the game is about without, you know, telling you too much about like, the first person to, the fictional first person to be on Mars, and the fictional like
Mhm.
government that like was overthrown on Earth in 22 whatever, and like,
Yeah.
um uh yeah. So uh I don't know. I don't like there's a what else about the game setting or the gameplay that you haven't told us yet that you want to talk about? And then we'll talk a little bit
So
about the Kickstarter itself and some of the bringing it all together.
the backstory of the game is that you have the sysnet. It's an ironclad thing. It's never been broken. No one's ever hacked it before. No one's ever been able to because the security system is that ironclad. Um, but there was a coronal ejection from the sun that knocked out the security protocols for about a millisecond. Everything we're doing right in that, your blinking of an eye takes longer than the actual blip in the sysnet, but everyone pounced on it.
Sure.
So you have hackers, you have uh, governments, you have corporations all trying to get as many files and steal as many things from the sysnet as possible. And this is basically one gigantic DDoS attack in the future. Um, and you're trying to get it all done before that security protocol just re-engages. So it's literally a blip in the map. Everyone runs for it, grabs what they can, and then it's going to be a mass selling of files in the future. Kind of like what happened to Sony when North
Right, right.
Korea
That's
hacked it, you
that's what
know?
I was thinking. It's like the Sony hack, and yeah.
Um, and a lot of the exploits are named after actual hacker exploits in the real world. Um, I'm dyslexic. I can't hack to save my life. You could give it to me in a line code, I will mess up half of it. But I have a real affinity for, like I said, I have affinity for the movie Hackers, but also Ghost in the Shell is a really big influence on how future technology is going to go. I'm a firm believer that technology will eventually be integrated into us in one way or another. It's not going to be I don't believe it's going to be the neural link that they're making right now, but I believe it's going to be something in the future.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, it's the story just adds more flavor, and I love flavor. You saw with Psychic Kids, I love flavor.
Right,
Uh,
right. Lots
but
of flavor in that book.
yeah, that unless they're looking for it, they're not going to see it. But yeah, no, I really like games with like themes that I can grab onto. Also, get me to play them.
Mm.
And sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're absolutely horrible, but the story that the game was portraying was really interesting.
That makes sense. And so I feel like it that seems like it's an appropriate time to talk about. I mean, you mentioned Lucy Shearer's art already that
Hmm.
we've done for the game, and I know you do. I know you like to, because we've worked together a few times now. You take the art and then you kind of take inspiration from the art to then kind of finalize the logos, and you had this game like at a prototype stage, and
Hmm.
it looked like a game, you know. All the elements were graphic designed, but then you've adjusted since then, some like the logo and some of the color schemes for the like the back of the cards are like versions of the art that Lucy did and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
like I know you like to just kind of keep it all, not necessarily that you're constantly in need of tweaking things, but it's like an iterative process, right? For you, it
Hmm.
seems like, where you're like, well, this is what I can do, and I did it, and now it's play testable, and but then like it's not. We're gonna get some art, and then there's a matching process or whatever. I mean, this is back to away from like the setting stuff of it, but like trying to make it all look like one piece, like it came from. That's one thing that we as Wet Ink are always trying to do, is like bring in. I mean, and this is, I mean, I've said a bunch of started. My problem is I start sentences and never finish them. We like to have things that are the they look like they might be from the world that the game is set in, right? So
Hmm.
we mentioned it's like a kid, so it has the pages get more distressed. There's all this ephemera that the kids have put into the journal, and like that was our direction to you, and you did a great job with it. And so this game, it obviously has a very different tone. It's like a kids, but like, and then I feel like Lucy did a great job on the art. And so what was that last, the most recent layer of like the altering of the stuff you've done before, where you're like, okay, now that I've seen the art, I see the way that, and I know there was a little bit of art direction from your part too as the designer.
Hmm.
Like you were talking about the specific vision that you have of the future based on like, so like there was definitely some back and forth. You participated in the art direction, I guess, is what I'm saying. So how
Yeah.
did that feed in once the art was finished? How did that feed back into the last layer of graphic design?
So once I got to see, like, even before Lucy was done with the final concepts, I was already starting to work on ideas of how to adapt um, her artwork to what the cards needed. Um, Everything has to be cohesive. The graphic design is all about cohesion. If it doesn't, if something stands out wrong, that's the first thing you're going to notice is wrong. So um, once we got the cover to the front cover, I started working on box ideas. I think I gave us like what, 10 box cover
Yeah,
ideas.
I think something like that. Yeah.
And then the cards, they really came naturally. I changed the fonts to match more the feel. The colors on like you were saying, I changed the colors to make to more of the feel. Because Lucy uses very vibrant colors. She uses a lot of purples, a lot of bright purples, like bright blues, you know. So I wanted to
it's
match.
it's almost like she does the classic, like you look at the color wheel and pick the two opposites, and then that's your palette for that image, is the two opposites, and whichever. That's not exactly what she's doing, but that, to me, that is like she'll do like a piece that has a lot of pink and green together, or
Mhm.
or the yellow and purple or something like that. It's very striking.
Yeah, no, and it came out. She did an amazing job. At first I was apprehensive because I designed the game for like 6 years to that point. Mine is, I'll take out the 3 years for the pandemic, but um,
But it'd been
it
percolating
was,
for a while.
yeah, yes, yeah. I've been working on it for, I think I think on Facebook I posted the first image that I did, and it was from 2016.
All right, all
Um,
right. It's
um,
receding into the distance.
well, I also retired from doing game design for a long while. I had my own company for Rampaging Out and then Rampaging the Winter War, and I just could not. handle the business side of it. And
Mhm.
I crashed hard and decided, all right, graphic design it is. Um, and when I originally sent this to you guys, I mentioned it to Brandon, I believe that, I had a game that I did and it's a fun game. He's like, oh, let me see it. So I sent it. It wasn't even a pitch. It was just, here, play it, have fun. Um, and once Lucy's artwork started coming in, it started like a lot of things in my head were in these images, like how the hydroponics bay works, um, how, the cover was just perfect, just someone just floating in space with the screens. I just absolutely fell in love with that. Um, using one of her other pieces for the expansion box, really, it was Brandon came Brandon suggested that one image, and then once I started working with it, I came up with the upside down on the one side and the right side up on this side, and it just flowed. Um, I redesigned, like you're saying, I redesigned the logo to match to be a more industrial style. Um, where before I did the future rounded style that everyone does on every single thing. You could put it in Star Trek and be like, oh,
Right.
future text.
It's
Um,
I read this on an L cars.
yeah. So her artwork really did change the direction of how the game would be perceived. And I think it's for the better. From everything from the box to cards, to every other thing that we've created for the Kickstarter, it really was, once the artwork came, it really did finish the game.
Yeah, I think it's been a lovely thing to see it all come together. So we're almost been talking for a while. I think we may have talked enough about all that stuff, but we don't want to go too long. But having mentioned Kickstarter and some of the stuff that's on the Kickstarter, like what are some of the things that excite you that are sort of like, I mean, obviously, I'll just say like you can get the game, you can get a
Mhm.
deluxe version of the game that's going to come with the neoprene mat because it's a lay it all out on the table kind of game. Again, Wet Ink believes in table presence and stuff like that, so that's an obvious thing to do. So you can get a little bit of those upgrades, um, but there's not a lot of other stuff because that's just the basic stuff. Uh,
Right.
so it's all in the stretch goals. You mentioned an expansion. What kind of other what are some of the add-ons that are hoped for or promised that people can get excited about that excite you as well?
So the expansion is a two-in-one expansion. One half of it is literally a hackers inspired expansion called Hack the Planets, where you're able to stack the files up to three high, where before you couldn't. It was always just one file down at a time. Um, and it's basically an homage to when they hacked the Gibson, because every time you saw the Gibson, it was data stacks, bump, 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 and they're going through it at the end. There are new exploits specifically made for the stacks, that are they're different from the exploits you have in the core game, but you use them in conjunction with the exploits in the core game. And then the other half of that is the contracts. It's just another way of players to get points. So whoever has the most Earth files, whoever has the most manufacturing files, will get extra points. And it's just a different way of just adding more points to the game. Um, there is a soundtrack that we made for it. It's an hour-long soundtrack. It's great. It's done by my friend Raheem, um, and he just made it. It's just very atmospheric. You get a lot of the feel of the game into it. A lot of things also are just more quality of game. Turning the first player marker from a card into chipboard. There's two extra planets that we're going to add to the game. Well, planets or loosely, we'll
Right,
have
right.
Luna and we'll also have the free belt, which is my homage to The Expanse.
Sure, sure.
Love The Expanse. Best sci-fi on TV. Um, sponsor us. It's there's things like making the planet cards into chipboard, so it's just a little bit more
Yeah,
tactile.
yeah.
Because the game is very self-contained, it's very complete. There's not a lot of real need to expand it. Um,
Right. It's just it's about yeah, it's I mean, this is part of the reason why we were so excited to do this game because it is a game that doesn't we're not as a publishing company, we're not starting off with Everdell with has a 3D tree and printed little squishy, juice balls or like there's a lot to that game and it looks great, but like we didn't feel up to starting with that. So starting with something that's like it's cards in a box, it's got some tokens, but then yeah, we can make it a little better if the interest is there. So
I also don't like Kickstarters where you get like a core box is this, but if you want the full game, you need to buy this, and this. I don't like that. I hate that aspect of Kickstarter. Um, you know, um, I like that it's a full game ready to go. Even if you just get the core game, it is a complete game there for you. You don't need to buy 9 million extra things to make the full game playable, you know?
right.
Um, and then like and also it's an affordable game. It's not $150 game. You are not putting out half your rent to buy a game.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is,
Yeah.
and I mean, part of that is, the coffin box that contains 300 models and who has ever actually played that Batman game. Uh, you know, uh, I don't, it's not that. It's not that. This is a modestly sized project that has some cards inside, and some really cool ideas and some cool art. So yeah, I mean, there's no reason to charge, you know, Batman and Conan level prices for this game. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't have that much in it, or it doesn't have that level of stuff in it.
right.
Um,
And it's a 25 to 30 minute long game. You
right,
could play in the amount of time it would take you to play to set up Conan, you can play 4 games.
right, right,
Um,
right. So that's the thing. Like, well, somebody else sets up your Conan game on the other end of the table. You can play this game on this end of the table, and anyway.
yeah.
Uh, Matthias, is there anything else that I think we hit all the questions that I had written down. Is there anything else that you want to say about this before we ask you about like where you are on the internet?
So I'm looking forward to hearing what people think about it. I'm looking forward to seeing other people play it that isn't me.
Mhm.
I must have play tested this game 500-600 times.
Goodness.
Honestly, we brought it to Gen Con and play tested it for 4 days straight. You know, I implore people to try and break the game. I really want to hear what they think
Ooh,
about it.
the challenge has been issued. Uh,
I, I'm like when I brought Rampaging Jotun to Gen Con, there was these 2 guys walked up and were like, "We're here to break your game." I'm like, "Have at it." I'm like, "Here's a notebook. If you find things wrong, let me know. I want to hear, and I want to hear what people think about it. I want to see other people play the game. And I hope people enjoy it. I really do. I put a lot into this game. I put a lot of thought into it. I'm actively working to do more past it. Um, you know, um, and I think that working on this again really gave me the impetus to try other things. And Lucy's art really did help me try, you know, more game design because it was very inspiring me to see something that was in my head that I really didn't tell people much about right there. And that with your art direction, my art direction, it just came out and it was
yeah.
just it's just really inspiring to see something that is in your head in real life.
Yeah, it is. And you know, when you yeah, when you get it right, right, you're it is so nice to see like, oh yeah, I had an idea. It used to be a spreadsheet. Now it's a box with stuff in it, and let's it looks great, and let's take it out and play it. That is it's a great thing. So all right, Matthias. Well, thank you for your time today to talk about this game, and you're you know you're you're such an integral part of the wedding games team. So thank you for all your efforts across now, I don't know, what are we up to, 10 projects or so. It's been a while. So this is a new ground for us. You as designer, not just as graphic designer. So this has been a new level up for us as well. So again, thank you for your time today. And where can people get a hold of you if they need if you've got a gap in your schedule that you need to fill with some freelance design work? How can people get into that gap?
You can find me on Facebook. You can also find me on Blue Sky. You know, me and the five other people that are on there. Um, uh, if you look on my bio on the Kickstarter, you'll see my it leads to my portfolio, and you can always reach me through there. Um, I'm more choosy now with my projects than I used to be. Um, and but I'm also, you know, if I want to reach out, see if it's something that works, you know, I'm always happy to work on fun new projects.
Sure.
You know, I'm chomping at the bit to start working on the Never Going Home books.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they're 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 in your hands.
oh, I'm can't wait. Yeah. Other than that, I'm pretty easy to find. You put my name is pretty unique. You put me in Google, you're gonna find me.
There you go.
Um,
There you go.
you know, and then I can't wait to get this game into everyone's hands. And I hope everyone really enjoys it.
Perfect. Once again, thank you for talking to me today, and thank you everyone who watched this video for watching.
Hmm?